And we're just taking 2 seconds. Hi, my name's Yaniv. I founded The Graph back in 2017. Been working on Geo the last 4 years. And I'm going to be talking about redefining truth on the internet. So I want to start with a question. Do you believe in objective truth? You know, when I was growing up, I feel like this was a really well understood concept, and it feels like in some ways it's gone a little bit out of fashion. People are moving a little bit more towards this, there's your truth and there's my truth. And, I can't help but wonder if, this lack of belief in objective truth is a little bit responsible for the sort of nihilism that we're seeing in the world today, right? There's a little bit of this, if there is no truth, then and nothing matters. If you don't have truth, then all you have is tribes, right? It's your tribe or my tribe, right? There's no higher purpose that we're trying to aspire to or thing that we're trying to understand. It really just becomes a battle, and every side just wants to win. And it really causes a lot of conflict in society. I would love to be able to have, conversations with my friends, with my family, and not have it feel like it's this existential, fight, is polarization that we're seeing. And this stuff really affects us. In many cities around the world, you see, rise in homelessness, you see difficulty getting basic things done, whether it's, just building, construction, creating housing, any of these sorts of things. And I think so much of it is because we struggle to have quality conversations. We have, policies that are made that are not the best policies. And it's easy to, go down the wrong path. But these things, they really matter. And it really affects our lives at a global and a local level. And so if you ask yourself, if you ask somebody in the 1100s or something, like, what is truth? They would say it's whatever's in the Bible, right? The Word of God. And we had the church, working in tandem with maybe a monarchy, and the Word of God was the truth. And for many centuries, this would have been the answer to that question. Then we had the scientific revolution. And, there we created a system. People wanted to say, hey, if you want to try to assert that something is true, you're going to make a hypothesis, and we're going to test it, and we're going to use replication. And I really love the scientific method. And one of the things I like about science is it's a very humbling discipline. You almost start out with the assumption that you're probably wrong. And if you want to try to assert a fact, you have to rigorously test it. And most of the time, you'll be wrong. But every once in a while, you might find a new discovery that pushes all of humanity forward. We have different types of institutions that have built up around providing the truth. And for many decades, we had a really strong press, centuries even. And they built systems around, being able to build trust with an audience using, processes like, verifying multiple sources, to corroborate, evidence, and we had these, newspapers that had built up trust. But at the beginning, when the printing press was first released in the 1400s, they actually had a crisis that was very similar to what we have today. Suddenly, anybody could print something, and there were pamphlets that you would have around in different towns and cities, and it was really hard for people to understand what is true. If anyone can print anything, and it's not just the Word of God anymore, how do you know what you can trust? And they had the same exact problem that we have today. But they did build systems to solve this problem, and it was really important for the evolution of society. So today we have the internet, and as this was starting, if you wanted to get an answer to a question, maybe you type it into Google. Maybe you'd Google yourself. You want to find facts about somebody, and maybe at some point this became seen as being a source of truth. And now, of course, today with LLMs, people are using ChatGPT, Anthropic, and you're asking these LLMs a lot of questions, and whatever they return becomes a sort of truth. It's okay, according to ChatGPT, this is the answer. But you have to ask, whenever you get a result, okay, but according to who? Is it something that was trained inside of the model that a bunch of people in an AI lab decided should be part of the training set? Is it, web tools that's hitting Google or, whatever search, and that's how you're getting the response? So, you have this tremendous concentration of power in these AI labs, but we still don't have, an open process that you can really understand to answer this question, right, according to who? I have an idea for a system that we can use to answer this question. It's according to Elon. Would be, I think we could use that as a system, right? I think obviously it's not the best idea. Does great work, great entrepreneur. On X, that tends to be the system, right? And a lot of people are on X, and it's okay. There's an algorithm, and it's going to kind of decide what you see. They do have community notes, which I think is really great and is an interesting kind of, type of solution to this problem. In the last few months, they also released something called Grokpedia. Right? So it's kind of a fork of Wikipedia that is created by Grok. So they have an AI that creates, AI-generated pages for everything, and it differs from Wikipedia. That actually is quite interesting to see, hey, here are two different sources of truth, in a sense, that disagree with each other. But still, you have the same problem, right? You don't want to have one algorithm, you don't want to have one company or one person who is the source of truth. And so at Geo, we've been building an open, decentralized network for human coordination, and it really centers around how we organize knowledge. And we want to create a system that can converge towards truth, that's open, that anyone can participate in, and that people can depend on and trust. And we use knowledge graphs for that. So knowledge graphs are the most flexible way of representing information. And you have entities and free-form relationships between those entities. So the main thing to understand here is most software applications that we use today use relational databases. Right? You have these tables, and they have a fixed structure. These are the fields, these are the relationships, and it all has to be known ahead of time. And so that's actually not adequate for representing a complex world, where you're constantly discovering new relationships between things. And so you need something that's more flexible. This also is really important if we want to have composability and interoperability across different types of applications. Right? If you have a single application, a relational database works well because you know exactly what you need for that app. But if we want to enable open, decentralized systems and lots of different applications that can use the same knowledge base, then you actually need knowledge graphs. And this is a core part of the solution. The next thing you need is a way to organize that knowledge. And we do that through communities called spaces. So each space can organize its own knowledge graph. And these spaces are self-sovereign. They govern themselves, and they're arranged in this sort of subtopic hierarchy. So you start at a high level, and you can drill down into more and more detailed spaces, and each space can have a set of experts or people that understand that topic better, that can organize the knowledge for that space. And importantly, we support pluralism. This is some of the problems that we have with these more centralized tools, like, say, Wikipedia, is that there's only one version of any given page. And so, if there's the COVID page on Wikipedia that says, no, there's no chance that it was made in a lab, like, that's it, that's the answer. And there's nothing, if you disagree with that, like, that's the end of the discussion. So we believe pluralism is really important because even though objective truth is important, nobody has a monopoly on truth, and no one can claim that they absolutely know the truth. And so you have to be able to support different perspectives. That's an important part of the process. But those perspectives should be competing with each other. And because they're part of the same system, they're actually part of the same knowledge graph, you can see where do these different communities disagree. And that's really important. And what is considered the global consensus at any point in time can change. But you can have these different points of view that can coexist as part of the same system. And so these spaces, they have governance, and people can participate in the spaces. They can publish knowledge, and you have folks that can review that. And think of this a little bit like a Git, for knowledge. You can have conversations, review, and you have like a history. So, anything that you're querying and you're asking in the knowledge graph, you can see how did it get into this state, right? What was the conversation that was had? And who published it, who changed it. And so I think having that kind of audit trail and provenance is really important for building trust. But only the big sorts of changes really need to go through that sort of governance. You can also have things where it's very easy for any members to publish things, and there you rely on things like rankings to help surface the best content. And so having generalized system for rankings is really important, where any type of entity can have a score. Relationships between things can have scores. These things can get updated, and this allows you to discover the best content. And I think this is important both for questions of truth, but also for subjective matters. I think having good open information systems is really important for subjective things as well as objective things. Not everything is an objective fact, but it's actually very valuable to get different people's opinions and perspectives, and even things like art or restaurants or any type of thing. It's nice to have open information systems. People can share things, they can vote, and we can have rankings, and we can know, according to this community, these are the best, X, Y, Z. We do think that in order to create a good system that converges towards truth, that produces great quality, it's important to have reputation. So, sometimes these crypto systems, they're based on tokens, they use token voting, things like that. I think that it's very important, actually, that you can't bribe your way towards changing the truth. Just because you have more money doesn't mean that your opinions are more true. Knowledge is not evenly distributed, right? Some people know more than others. And it's an interesting question. What are the factors that we would use to, build into those weightings? It's probably a combination of lots of things. It'd be, your work history, your education history, what have you produced? And I think predictions is really interesting. Now, we have prediction markets, and if you've made a prediction on something that was, controversial or, not a lot of people believed, and then later turned out to be true, that's probably a good indication that you're knowledgeable in that area. I think experts in different fields, they tend to be able to spot each other out. They're not always true, and sometimes you can form into like cliques, but generally, experts tend to be able to find other people who are knowledgeable in a given area more than someone who maybe isn't knowledgeable in that area. So I think with all of these different types of things, we can build up reputation, and reputation is really important, I think, for creating systems that converge towards truth. And so ultimately, I believe that our goal needs to be to build a meritocracy. Right, an open system that anybody can participate in, but that rewards quality contributions, hard work, people that take the time to really understand things and create value, for others. And so, just like, we do believe in objective truth, we also believe that, we need to be building a meritocracy. And if we create a system that incentivizes people to do great work, that's really important and good for society. So last year, we released Geo Podcasts. It's an app that's built on the Geo Knowledge Graph. And what we've been doing is extracting from these really interesting conversations that are happening on podcasts every day, where top experts go on podcasts, they have interesting conversations about the work that they're doing or things that are happening in the world, and we extract claims and the topics of conversation and a lot of knowledge that up until now has just been like embedded and kind of stored away in these podcasts. So we've been quietly building that up, and there's actually a ton of just really interesting knowledge that comes out of that. And today, I'm excited to announce Geo News, which is a new app that we're launching today. That's an aggregator for the top news stories that are coming out every day, and similarly, we extract the top claims that are coming out of each of these news stories to start to create like a historical record of what's happening in the world. And today we're opening with AI, crypto, health, and world affairs as being our first 4 spaces for crypto news. We'll be expanding the different spaces that we support here. We're going to be making it more interactive. Right now we have a bunch of curators that are part of our early network that are organizing this knowledge, but we want to open it up so people can participate. But it's a really nice reading experience, and a big part of what we want to do is get out of this world of clickbait, these algorithms that are trying to hack you, and really provide something that is empowering and useful to you, that it's informative, that respects your time, and we believe that better knowledge is empowering for people. So we're releasing this today. You can check it out at news.geobrowser.io. It's live now, and podcasts and news, and we're going to be releasing more apps like this that are all built on top of the Geo Knowledge Graph. So all of this knowledge is interconnected, and you can also use it in your own applications. You can use it from your agents, can access this news feed, and we think that having all of this knowledge open, composable, and also verifiable is going to be really useful. Whenever we publish content here, it actually goes on the blockchain. So first we serialize the knowledge in this new knowledge graph standard that we've created called GRC20. We upload it to IPFS. We publish it on chain, and so there's a historical record of all of the changes, and it's available to everybody to use. And so, a lot of people came into Web3 for the revolution, right? We wanted to change how people cooperate and organize, to not have to depend on either, the large banks or tech platforms, to empower individuals, and to give people freedom and opportunity. And I think this vision is still very much alive, and it's more important than ever. And I think we just needed the right tools before we could do this, right? I think finance is really important. Open decentralized finance is really important, but so is knowledge and information, right? There's, so many things can't be represented just as money, and in fact, it's things that are happening in the world. And so with the right tools to actually organize, to coordinate, to share information, and to better understand what's happening in the world and what we should do, right? That's coordination, right? What should our goals be? What should the policies be? How should we achieve these things together? I think we can make the change that we all came here to make. So I think we're closer than ever, and we have to keep the fire alive, and now we have better tools to do this. So if you're interested in participating, we just launched our curator program to bootstrap our initial network of curators. You can sign up here, and we're going to be opening this up to our next cohort of curators very soon. And yeah, looking forward to working with everybody to help create better systems of coordination, to better understand what's happening in the world, and to make the impact we came here to make. Thank you so much.